I'm going to move on to a few questions that were sent in to us. First few are from young people who attend the Kerry Diocesan Youth Service. So, first one, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. How do you deal with the pressure from parents, friends, family, or even society in general when you're not progressing fast enough or not at all on your career path? So you spoke about this kind of outside influences, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So I suppose the first thing is, as everybody who's listening to this will know, your own journey is very personal to yourself. Your own experience of life is very personal to you. Nobody really knows you except yourself. I always have an expression that I use with my coaching clients. I say, we know our own truth. You know, we all have our own truth. And everybody, I say that to, nobody has to have that explained to them. They know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
And they mean that whatever way they're presenting on the outside, do you know what I mean? That they know what's going on the inside. And they know the reason for being angry or being sad or lashing out at somebody or, you know, getting frustrated or not finding a job or, you know, whatever it happens to be, or staying in the room all the time. Like, we all know why we do these things, you know?
Yes.
So once we get to know ourselves a little bit, you know, the idea is that just how to translate that, I suppose, into how our life rolls out, you know. So getting to know yourself, being confident in yourself, and then communicating, you know, because you can never blame people really who are getting maybe frustrated with you if they don't know what's going on for you, and they don't understand where you're coming from. So I have a great thing, it's called the cake technique. You know, you might think it's cake an acronym for something.
Yeah.
And it isn't. It's quite simply that whoever is coming down on you, do you know what I mean, and giving you a bit of like grief around what you're not or are doing. You know, if you're comfortable in the way you're being, that's the first thing, to look inside and go, well, you know, is the person right? Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
do they have a point? That's the first thing. Do they have a point? If you know that they're off the mark, do you know what I mean? There's something else going on with you, then we need to sit down and have a chat with that. And I know for everybody that is not easy. But I call it the cake technique. Whoever it is, you know, hopefully they're approachable. And you'll say to them, you know, can we have a sit down and a chat about 5 o'clock tomorrow evening or 7 o'clock, or when would suit you? I just want to have a chat with you. And you know, for children and parents, and especially, you know, parents and guardians, you know, if somebody of your child says, I want to have a chat with you, it's like, what's this about? So they will listen most of the time, do you know what I mean, and go, okay. Because they'll think it's really something really, really, really awful. Do you know what I mean? Which is awful, but you know what I mean? We sit down and we buy their favourite cake, or you get their favourite biscuits, or if they're diabetic, whatever they like eating or consuming, food or beverage, is a non-alcoholic, definitely. But you sit down and you say, look, we'll have a chat. And so you think, God, I'd never be able to do that. I'm only a child, I'm only a teenager. You know, how will I ever stand up to my dad? And the thing is, we talk about a thing called parent, adult, or child. You can be this in any situation. You might be roared and shouted at by your parents, and that's actually them often in they might be losing the plot. They're in child mode.
Yes.
You know, and you might be telling them where to go, and you know, whatever. And that might be you in parent mode. But if you're in adult mode, you go, you're a little upset at the moment, and I'm a little upset. How about if we could both, you know, take a break now, and we'll come back and chat about this later. That's you being adult. So you calling the coffee conversation using the cake technique is being the adult in the situation. And then you sit them down, and I always say, you tell them 2 things. One is, I love you very much. It's a killer. Gets them every time. Okay? I love you very much. And I know, because even though you might know this, but do reassure yourself, they have your best. You know, whoever's giving you this advice, you know, and telling you what to do or asking you why you're not doing something, they have your best, and we have to believe this. You know, Franklin Covey says, what is the person's intent?
Yes.
Their intent is for you to have a good life, a happy career, get on with yourself, get out of the room, have a shower, do you know what I mean? Because they think you're miserable, or they think you might be better off. And we can't criticize them for that. That's just what they want to do. That's natural. People want that for you.
Yeah.
But the second thing is, you know, you say, I love you very much. If that's the context, you know. The second thing is, if you're under 18, definitely people do have a little bit of an influence, because you don't have the knowledge, the skills, whatever, to make a decision. But sometimes we just know in our heart of hearts it's the right decision.
Yeah.
So you say, look, I have to you have to let me grow up and make these decisions for myself. I need to go out and make these decisions for myself. And there's two sides to that. You say, it might not go well, like it might go brilliantly or it might not go well, but I am prepared. Whatever I'm doing at the moment, I'm doing it for a reason, and I'm going to share the reason with you, or I can't tell you about why at the moment, but I'll share it with you later. But for the moment, I am an adult, if I am an adult, or I'm old enough to start making decisions for myself, and I need that in order to develop as a human. And I am prepared to accept whatever the outcome is, be it a positive or a negative of my own decision. But you have to let me live my own life. And it's my life, and you have yours. You know.
And it's important, isn't it?
One caveat on that, Barry. One caveat on that. I always say, I don't want to be sounding preachy.
Yeah.
But I say to people, do whatever you want, absolutely whatever you want, ever in life, as long as two conditions are met. It's not harming you, and it's not harming somebody else.
Absolutely.
Not harming you, and it's not harming somebody else, or the environment, preferably. But in the environment, it is harming other people, but not harming you specifically. If nobody else is harmed by what you're doing, then that's okay.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Because we do have to learn on our journey.
Yeah, it's good advice in general, and it's important as well that not to let these outside pressures, I suppose, rush you when you're making these big decisions as well. And I think having that conversation may allow you to slow things down a little bit, and
100%. And just I work with people of all ages, so people from their teens into their early 20s, and up to people who are sometimes career changers in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and they tell me, if they're unhappy in their careers, they tell me that they knew, for example, the first day they set foot in college, and most of them, are graduates, and they've gone to college, they've done some sort of course. They knew the first day or the first week that it just was not the path for them.
Yeah.
But because of all sorts of, sometimes they're internal pressures, but it's usually they carry on because they're worried about what people think about them.
Yeah.
They carry on because they're under pressure to stay on. But sometimes it is, a lot of the time it is pure internal,
Yeah.
And they stick with things, and before they know it, they're out, they have a job, and then they meet somebody, they want a relationship, they want a house, they want to start paying into a mortgage, they have maybe a family together or lots of other responsibilities. You have to pay the bank manager, and then they wake up one day and go, I am absolutely miserable in this career, and I've been miserable for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and that happens.
Yeah, okay.
So don't sleepwalk, it's not, reassure the person that, I tell you, I was running a household when I was, 10, 11 years of age, and I was making a lot of adult decisions, and no one's going to turn around and go, you couldn't make those. I was capable of making them. My dad entrusted me to make them because my mum was, was not well, and he was working 2 jobs at the time trying to make ends meet for, health bills and stuff like that.
So take your time, don't rush into it.
Take your time.
Be deliberate.
Take your time. Everything, it's a horrible fact, but a true one, that everything always works out in the end. And the reason it does is because even if the external is going pear-shaped, you can, again, sorry to keep harping on it.
Not at all.
Control what's going on in the mind.
Absolutely. So moving on now to something quite practical, and this one comes from the Youth Information Participation and Eurodesk Youth Work Ireland. That's in Tipperary, so a young person involved with them. How do you make a CV impressive if you don't have experience in the field you're looking to get into? So again, we touched on this.
So up tip and up Kerry, by the way. Not a monster coming in. I'm a monster
Absolutely, yes.
Rugby.
Oh dear. Oh, you should have told me that, Joe.
Yeah. I know.
Leinster.
So how do you make your CV work? So obviously, the things I mentioned. So if there's stuff you're involved in at home, if you've got voluntary work, community work, if you can get any skills. So you can learn a language at any stage. There's a lovely little website called duolingo.com, I think it is, and you can start building your language skills. Am I answering the question correctly, Barry?
I suppose way to make your CV. So you want a job in a particular field, you've no experience in that field. How do you make your CV kind of impressive despite that fact?
So just to gain as many skills that are both relevant to that area and obviously complementary skills, so the transferable skills. So anything you can do And you might say, well, how am I going to build my even soft skills like communication, team working, whatever? You can do a lot of that stuff online, and networking as well. I mean, most probably people listening will at least have an Instagram account if they don't also have Snapchat. And some of the older ones might be on Twitter. If they're much older, they might be on Facebook, probably not anymore. LinkedIn. So making sure that you're active. You're proficient in sort of technology, which most people are, but making sure that you're up to speed on everything, and always what we call you don't lie on your CV. It's about making a lot out of the little. Mm-hmm. So any experience that you do have that you got before the current scenario, if you're out of a job, make a lot or as much out of that, and building your skills and learning new things all the time, and reaching out and connecting with people.
And as you said,
I mean, the reality is that about 85% of jobs are not advertised, and probably more at the moment.
Wow.
And so you go, where are they? They're in the hidden jobs market, and they're just got by tapping into to the hidden jobs market.
And you said right at the beginning, you listed 3 things that kind of are important, and it comes back to that they're universal no matter what the field you're going to, So,
100%.
And look, as you said, just ask. Look for that hidden market. Ask, and I've seen some great examples. My own nephew and niece have done that. They went looking and got rejected and did interview after interview, and my niece finally got a wonderful job just recently. And sheer perseverance, no experience in the field, but they said, you know what, you've shown great skills in other areas. Let's give you a go. So I think that's brilliant. I'm going to move on because I'm keeping an eye on our time there. We'll probably go over time, but it doesn't matter. So how do you get? This is a question about work experience a bit, and I think you've already kind of mentioned this. How do you get work experience if it's not through, say, a transition year class or through the school system? So if you want to get experience and you don't have that option, for example. What could you do? You mentioned volunteering.
Yeah, so just literally, as you've said there, reaching out to people. Some of the people who are younger listening or watching may feel LinkedIn isn't the place for them yet. You know what I mean? Then just identifying who you want to talk to and reaching out. Dropping an email or ask them for a virtual coffee. If you have anybody, like if you don't feel comfortable on LinkedIn at the moment, because you feel you're too young for it, then maybe an older person in the family or your connections might do a little bit of research for you and identify a couple of people that you might chat to and reach out to. So, just as you mentioned earlier in terms of your niece and your nephew, that is just the way to go. And the lovely thing about this current situation is that everybody's very reachable.
Yes.
Like before, when we were physically in offices, environments, sites, factories, whatever, you were saying to a student, well, take a bus out there and call in if you're not getting a response from them. Of course, you can't do that, but you can reach out virtually and just say, "Will you have a virtual coffee with me?"
Absolutely.
And my experience, probably yours the same, Barry, is that the majority of people are really, really happy to help you. And the nice thing is, if you're in the younger age categories, people are far more willing to chat to you than they ever are when you get sort of into your sort of 40s and 50s. You know what I mean? Then it's more difficult. But when they see a young person, most people want to help other people. Particularly, everybody remembers being that age and just finding life very intimidating.
Absolutely.
And there's a guy called Norman Crowley from Crowley Carbon.
Right.
And it's an environmental company. And so he had a company where he had very few jobs, but there was loads of people graduating in that area. And he said this particular guy, he mailed him and said, I want a job, and like that scenario earlier, no, just don't have anything. Mailed him again. Oh no, he actually said, okay, when can I contact you again? Well, is there a possibility? He says, leave it for about 2 or 3 months anyway. So he waited 2 months. He called him again, and he went, no, still nothing. He said, when will I call? Will I call again? He said, just maybe another 3 or 4 months. It's just things aren't good at the moment. Another 3 months, your man calls again, and he said, eventually I gave him a job to just do something for me because
get him
I
to
just
stop
wanted
calling me. Yeah.
I said I just wanted him to be out of the way and stop calling me. Now, he wasn't a pest. He wasn't creeping him. He wasn't stalking him. He wasn't ringing every 5 minutes or every day or every other day. He was just saying, when may I call again? And then as soon as he got the window to call or the door to open, called again. And he said he ended up hiring him because he said he was fantastic,
Okay.
And he thought, I have to find something for this guy to do. This guy he's just gold, you know. So if you're sort of enthusiastic about what you're doing, and that's where it comes back to. It all comes back to what you mentioned there that I mentioned right at the start. Find something you're really interested in, because people buy enthusiasm. People hire people.
Yes.
And same way that when you leave a job, they say people leave managers, you know, because the relationship is broken down or it's irritating. And people, you know, all business, you know, is about people at the end of the day. All work is about people. It's people hiring people. It's people, you know, hiring humans that bring value added to your business, to your organization, to your society, whatever. So, you know, be that person. But enthusiasm for what you want it's just, you know, you know yourself.
And you can tell when you're speaking to somebody, their enthusiasm comes through. An employer can see that. You know, if you're speaking to somebody who's not interested, that comes through as well very quickly. But enthusiasm is really important. So I'm going to finish up with a final question. It kind of wraps up, I suppose, everything we've been talking about. Just to ask, what are some, and it probably goes right back again to the beginning, what you said, and it could be a good time to remind us, what are the core skills a young person needs for work? So.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mentioned the ability to get on with people, the passion, and obviously, you know, so the hard work and making connections and all of that, and having the capability to do the job. But I did some research about less than a decade ago on exactly that. What are the top skills that any employer would look for in any person coming in? So any graduate or any young person coming in. And plus, further down the list, there was a little bit of, you know, team working or leadership or whatever. But the number one skill is communication. Number one skill is being a good communicator. And that does not mean talking like you and I are doing. Being a good communicator means being able to listen and hear what another person says and understand it and interpret it and check in with them if you haven't understood. And it also means being able to articulate yourself clearly, what you want, you know, what you need, what's going on here. So it's communication is the key one every time. So if there's one thing that you work on, it's your communication skills. We talk all the time about emotional intelligence. And people worry, they say, I'm not bright enough, you know, to do this, that, and the other. My IQ is low. Your IQ is a measure of your sort of academic intelligence. Your emotional intelligence is a measure of how you get on with other people. And what they know from studies and from research, huge swathes of them at this stage, is that people who have the ability to, you know, read other people and understand them and empathize and control their own emotions and their stress and whatever, are absolutely far more likely to be successful and have long enduring jobs and careers than people who are lower in that score. And the nice thing we know is that emotional intelligence is something we can build and develop all the time. So IQ is fixed, your academic intelligence is pretty much fixed, you know. You can study hard, but if you don't get it, you don't get it. But your emotional intelligence is something innate to you, and it's something you can build and develop on all the time. So you can go from having quite a low score in it to a high score. So so communication is key, and it's part of that.
Is the big one. So that's the big takeaway. So one skill you're going to work on your communication skills. So listen,
thank you. Your relationship, your communication skills and building relationships with other people. Yeah,
because it all comes down to that at the end of the day, doesn't it? Whether it be work or in any other situation. So we'll finish it there. Thank you, as ever, Jill. It's been enlightening, and as ever, I end up learning lots as well from these things. All the other talks I've learned, and a lot of what you said today is applicable not just in your work life, I think, but in other situations as well. So really, really fantastic information we've got there. So I'm sure we'll talk again in the not too distant future.
Yeah, thanks, Barry, and I always learn from you too, so it's a two-way street.
Okay, thanks, Jill. Bye-bye.
Thanks, take care. Bye-bye.